Part of what we have to do. Please, so we're going to get going again. If you can wind down your conversations. We thinned out this crowd in a hurry. Are we on? Yeah. Okay. So the next piece we're going to go into is a discussion that Jose Luis Caceres is going to lead us on, having to do with allocations and ACA authorizations. So please welcome Jose Luis.
So those of you that know me, I'm the kind of person that is okay cracking eggs to make an omelet. And I found out I was trying to find a way to streamline that 2-month process that we had been talking about. And I found a way to make an omelet without cracking any eggs, and that's what this presentation's about. This lady, she's waiting at the DMV. I don't wait at the DMV. Hopefully you don't have to wait at the DMV. You make an appointment. So if you made a 10 a.m. appointment, actually I'm going to pause here for a second. Raise your hand if you work for the state and you have a hard time getting CTC allocations on time submitted from your agencies. Greg, do you have trouble with people submitting? Sorry, I said the wrong thing. CTC allocations on time?
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm a nice, flexible guy. So.
It turns out there's no incentive for a local agency to be a week early or a day early or even a month early submitting a CTC allocation request. When there's no incentive to show up early to anything, you find people showing up right at the last minute, like my presentation right now. Hey guys. Hopefully there's some incentive here. At the DMV, same thing. You would never show up 30 minutes or an hour early for a 10 a.m. DMV appointment. If you did, I would make fun of you. What are you going to do there? Just play on your phone? No. You're going to show up right at the last minute, 2 minutes before, be jogging from the parking lot, just go up to the counter, get your new driver's license, and get out. That's because we don't like to waste time. Oh, yes.
I think there is an incentive for an early allocation request.
Oh, fascinating. Because I couldn't find an incentive other than you're on time. When you're early, you're on time.
What if there is a problem? Then you got that time.
Let's mic you up. Oh, yeah, I suppose there's also an incentive to turning in correct paperwork. And if our process has so much time that someone can turn in completely inaccurate paperwork and still get allocated in time, I don't actually think that that's what we're trying to accomplish. Let's see. There you go. So you've already heard this. Okay, so turns out there's really no incentive. And my presentation, by the way, is focused on projects that have a CTC allocation and federal funds. So that could look like federal ATP, federal STIP. You could have ATP or STIP funds, plus you have some other federal funds, not federal transit, but some other federal highway funds like CMAQ, RSTP, earmark repurposing, HSIP, anytime where you're trying to get a joint federal and CTC action. So typically, if you're a sponsor, you would be authorizing and allocating. If you're going to go to the August meeting, you need to get your paperwork in by June 18th, 2018. As a sponsor, I realize the state isn't waiting around, but as a sponsor, your project was ready to list when you turned it in. You're ready, and now you wait. Then the CTC allocates August 15th. Now with the concurrent processing that John just talked about, this kind of brings everything together. You would potentially authorize by September 15th. In the SACOG region, we actually have not seen an authorization happen this fast yet. But that's, in theory, how fast it could happen. If you're looking at it, it says September 15th. OA starts running out. I know the CTC is usually pretty good about holding on to OA for STIP projects. It's potentially probable that your project wouldn't actually authorize until October. Sometimes November. It really takes a while sometimes for the federal funds to come out. Once you have the authorization, that's when you award. Remember, we all recited it with Winton. You don't advertise before authorizing, which means if you wait to advertise after your authorization, 4 weeks standard advertising period, then a week to 3 weeks to review those bids, and then finally award. you're at November 13th. That's a best case scenario. I've shown this to my sponsors, and they think, that's pretty aggressive, Jose Luis. I'm like, well, I didn't want to show them the most pessimistic scenario. Then everyone would shoot it down. So what I'm saying, this is the punchline of this message, is AC before allocation. AC and allocate at the same time. So you're going to turn in your concurrent information. You're going to ask for both the federal authorization and the CTC allocation. I'm saying don't ask for everything in the federal authorization. Just ask for AC. All that gives you is permission to begin federally reimbursable work. You're not actually asking to encumber federal funds. When you're not asking to encumber federal funds, no one's waiting around on your federal paperwork anymore. Instead, you submit. Yes.
How would you program this now?
Great that you'd ask. Every single STIP project in the entire state is programmed. Oh, you ask your question again.
Okay. Hello? Can you hear me? Okay. So you said that you AC, and we all know that when you AC project, you need to program it in the FTIP. In order for you to program a project in the FTIP as AC, you have to demonstrate that you got the non-federal funds available to program the project.
Your question because this guy's saying it's not.
Sorry, go ahead.
Oh, it says, all right.
Hey!
Yeah. My name is Sir Mohammed Al Jaber. Okay, so you're saying that you're saying this for almost every project that you AC.
Every CTC allocation project that also has federal funds. Go on.
Right, and you're saying that AC. So in the FTIP, you need to show the project programmed as AC as well, correct?
Yes, I've
And
got a
in
slide
order-
called how.
Okay.
But go on.
And in order for you to show that, you need to show the availability of non-federal funds so that you can AC the project.
Absolutely.
And you have to demonstrate that you have those funds. And not every
Sure.
agency can demonstrate that they have the local funds or the non-federal funds to program in their FTIPs to be able to do this process. So you need to keep that in mind too.
I think you'll find that an agency will actually probably not spend a dime of their local funds before getting an AC conversion into my schedule. Most agencies, even small ones, should be able to carry the cost for about 2 to 3 months between AC authorization and AC conversion. You would convert in the same fiscal year. But there's a house slide coming up. I appreciate it, though. All right, so June 18th, you're submitting the same date as under the other scenario, which is the last possible date I should add. Do you want people to submit on the last possible date, Greg?
Whatever.
That's what's going to happen. But the AC is going to come right away. This is under current schedules. Come October, that AC is not going to be July 30th. It's going to be something closer to July 15th. That's what local assistance is talking about. The allocation is going to come, but it's okay. You haven't been waiting for that allocation. You went out to bid right after you got that AC. You're not waiting anymore. You're awarding just a month after the CTC meeting. When you award a month after the CTC meeting, you make people like Lori Waters and Mitch Weiss and all the CTC staff happy because you become the kind of agency that no longer needs an award extension request. You're going to get it done in a month. Even if bids came in high or few, you don't need an extension to go out and advertise. You're only a month into your schedule. So you're awarding September 17th. Now the conversion that would happen, this is actually when you get the federal funds. To recap, AC is you get permission to begin a federally reimbursable project, but no one has promised you those federal funds yet. If federal funds are a box of donuts, you have not licked them yet. They don't belong to you. And you want to get that obligation. That would happen September 27th. You just awarded September 17th. The contractor hasn't even started work yet. You won't even see the next invoice until November or December at the earliest. There will be a demonstration of local funds. Any board, city council, commission would be okay with this level of risk of ACing before conversion. Again, September 27th, kind of late in the federal fiscal year. You'd be looking more like October or November. This schedule applies to any CTC meeting. I decided to pick the next one. That's 47 days saved, and no one had to do a single thing different. Mohan was talking about programming correctly, and I'll talk about that in a sec. But a bit of trivia. Every single STIP project that belongs to every single RTPA is already programmed as RIP, STIP, AC. They're already programmed with AC. You don't even have to do any programming changes for RIP. Now, ATP projects are not programmed as ATP AC. So you would need to change that. If you're doing HSIP or CMAC, RSCP, obviously those would have to be done. Now, what if you don't wait to the last minute? If you're doing the authorize and allocation kind of standard process, the earliest you could possibly submit to go to the August CTC meeting is May 1st. Any earlier, you're going to June. Nobody submits their paperwork this early. I talked to my district local assistants and said, what happens if someone gave you this paperwork this early? They wouldn't even look at it. There's no point. They have other things to work on between now and when paperwork is due to headquarters. So there would be some significant waiting. There would be real people waiting on this paperwork. There's no incentive to turn it in this early, folks. It's just sitting there. Finally, the allocation happens August 15th. You authorize September 15th, award. This is the same schedule, whether an agency submits May 1st or June 18th. I was not able to find a substantial incentive for early submittal of CTC allocation. It doesn't pay to show up early to the DMV. Unless you do this. If you AC and allocate, and you submit May 1st, you're crazy already. I mean, a day earlier you would have been at the June meeting, but all right, May 1st. Let's see what happens. The AC under current schedules gets approved May 29th. Again, come October, that's going to be more like May 15th. The award happens July 17th. That's crazy. We already heard in a previous PowerPoint, you cannot award before an August CTC meeting, except when you can. There was a slide that Winton was going over about when you can award. It's called SB 184. There's some rules associated with it. Go read those rules. Specifically, you need to be in the current state fiscal year. Only applies to STIP. You can't do SB 184 for ATP. There's no awarding ATP or any SB1 projects before a CTC meeting. But for STIP, every region here, we all already do SB 184 for our PPM funds. It's not new to us, but it is new to a lot of our projects. I think we only counted one project last year that took advantage of SB 184. It's a letter. You write it off, your sponsor writes it off. The date that's on the top of that letter is the letter that they can start doing their work. They don't actually need CTC approval to go out and award before a CTC meeting. There's some risk involved, and we'll talk about that later. So then you're awarding a full month before the CTC meeting. The 6 month to award deadline isn't even something you're worried about anymore. You could go get one bid, re-advertise. You might have time to re-advertise twice. The conversion takes place August 30th, well before anyone has even started invoicing you yet. That would save 109 days. When I showed this to people, they asked me what rule we broke, and no rules got broken. This is all current procedures and process. So how does this happen? I gave you guys some handouts, and I'm not planning on going over it. But you have to be programmed accordingly. Your local agency has to be at least able or capable of carrying the local funds. Without having licked those donuts, they don't actually have the full assurance of the federal government that those funds will be there for them. But every AC I've ever done has always paid off. I guess the federal government could get out of the transportation business, but I don't see that happening. The CTC may not, sorry, I'm getting into how. I think that's most of the how. Let me grab the handout. Yeah, I think the only other thing is you'd need to do that SB 184 if you plan to award before. If you don't do SB 184, maybe your project's programmed 2 years out and this whole thing was a giant advancement for you, then you're waiting to award August 15th. That's still faster than the previous slide. All right, benefits.
Quick question, Jose
Yes.
Luis, right here. You mentioned SB 184. What about LONP? Does that help accomplish the same thing?
LONP is no good for you. Neither is AB 3090. Under an LONP, which no one's going to do for a long time, there's so much SB1 funds, you just request the advancement. So if I was going to tell you something that you might remember for 5 years from now, when the first LONP gets approved, it would be, okay, so you must have SB1 funds in some outer year, and you want it earlier. When you do an LOMP, you actually have to have your project all ready to go as if you were requesting an allocation. You submit it the 2 months before a CTC meeting, and then at that meeting, they may or may not, it's not guaranteed, approve you to start. And then you still have to do your contract with them. You've saved time in that you're delivering your projects years before your project might be programmed, but the LOMP doesn't let you award any earlier. It's not really a good tool for this. I looked, the federal statute doesn't require that we do it this way. The LOMP is just it says that it can exist, and then CTC came up with guidelines that are the ones we have. Again, LOMP is not a tool that people are going to be using for a while. Yes.
Got a question here?
Yes. So for the, okay, I'm forgetting the bill number. What is it? AB 194?
184.
184, thank you. SB 184. Okay, so for the SB 184, do you need that just to award the contract prior to allocation, or do you need that even to advertise the contract prior to allocation?
So I'm going to make Wenton start making everybody repeat his corollary to advertise, to authorize before you advertise. The other corollary he said was, you have to wait to award after allocation. But the CTC, it's always been their policy, you may advertise before a CTC vote. You can advertise before you even turn in your paperwork to local assistance. Yeah. Right. So if you have
The comment
100%
there was you need a federal authorization, of course, if you have the federal funds involved.
If you have a 100%
Advertise.
state-funded project, SB1, you can advertise the day you turn in your paperwork to local assistance. You don't actually have to wait for any of those procedures to happen. Your project's ready to list, they say go ahead and list it. The issue is when you're trying to do a federally funded project through the CTC, you gotta wait for that federal authorization. It's written in law. If you do it, you're screwed for your construction phase. So the CTC doesn't care if you advertise before. I'm gonna go a little faster. All right, benefits. If you save 30 days, someone was telling me, well, what's the benefit of 30 days? That could mean that could mean timing it just right for the school year or the college school year. That could mean the difference between having to winterize your project. 30 days is not just 30 days. It could mean a big difference for you and your sponsor. 100 days, I don't even know if I need to go into the benefits of 100 days. But every single project could benefit from AC if they're doing federal and STIP. There are some risks. I mentioned them before. CTC may not allocate, in which case you might be going to the next meeting. Generally, CTC is batting pretty well in terms of allocating our STIP projects and our ATP projects. I think the biggest risk is explaining to your elected officials what it means to AC and giving them reassurance that they're more likely to be attacked by a shark than to not get their AC converted. What I try to tell people is every high-cost bridge project in the state is required to do AC. That's how much the state and sponsors are wed to the AC process. I'm Jose Luis Costas. I'll take any questions.
Got a question over here?
A couple over there.
Hi, Debbie Hale with the Transportation Agency for Monterey County. Okay, I wanted to go back to the part where you said that you automatically are AC or it's already AC if your project is in the STIP.
Yep.
So how do you activate that? What do you have to do?
It's about a one-page form that it's actually the same. The thing is, I haven't seen your guys' new E76 form, but the finance letter has 3 columns, generally speaking, or your E76 will have 3 columns. One is your local funds, one is your federal funds you're asking for authorization. The other column that's not used all the time is the funds you're asking for AC approval. You just got to put your money in the other column. That's all you got to do in terms of requesting the AC. I said I think I answered your question.
Are there any risks to doing an AC in case lately there's been some rescissions coming out of the White House that could impact projects? And so, I mean, yes, risk of shark, but some of us have lost money through rescission acts. So just is that a real risk? If you've programmed in the FTIP your project, your funds, your demo funds specifically, because that's what the rescissions are all based on, as AC demo, and then that rescission hits, what happens to that funding in those instances?
So the scenario would probably be, you're talking about a scenario where there's two alternatives. It sounds like no matter what, the agency's coming and they want to deliver like an earmark funded project, and they're coming in on a certain schedule. Their options with the CTC are to request are the left-hand column and the right-hand column. On the left-hand column, if that rescission happens, they've got CTC allocation, and you just lost your funds in the rescission, and the authorization didn't take place till September 15th. On the right-hand column, you did everything earlier, and you got your conversion by August 30th, a full 15 days faster. My column actually helps with that rescission problem.
If the AC later will be convertible, if it happens, if
Yeah,
you're in
you can
that
only
little-
convert federal funds that exist. So if you have CMAQ funds, they might have rescinded a portion of your CMAQ funds, but you still have CMAQ funds. But the earmark, a rescinded earmark, is gone.
So if I understand, if I reiterate the question, you're wondering if you AC, there's a rescission, and now you don't have the apportionment available to convert your AC obligation, and therefore you have to carry the funds longer, or for a longer period of time as far as carry the costs. You can't get reimbursed as soon as you wanted to get reimbursed. And yeah, that's a minor risk. I don't know how, not having the numbers in my head to compare how much was rescinded from your region versus what you had to convert within your region. But it's a consideration, but I think the time benefits that Jose Luis is mentioning perhaps offsets that consideration, because you get your conversion sooner perhaps than the end of the year, which is a lot of times when the rescissions take effect. Did that help answer your question a little bit? Okay, got another question here.
So for the AC, it's really an opportunity for if you run out of federal funds and you have a project that needs additional funding and you have the available non-federal funds that you can add to the project, you can AC and reserve the right later on to get those funds back by conversion. And you can do it either in 1 year, the next year, same year, future years, or you can do it in installments. That really depends on how you want to get reimbursed or how you can get your federal funds. There is a very, very slim chance that those federal funds will not be available. Those federal funds that we all anticipate being available for us year after year, they might not happen, and that's the risk that you need to take, but it never happened. The other thing is that you need to remember, and a word of caution, is that the FTIP is a public document that your constituents and the public gets to see that document, and they get to see your finances. So when you tell the public that you have local funds, non-federal funds available to AC a project, somebody will look at it and will ask you where you got those local funds from. So you really need to be able to demonstrate that you do have those non-federal funds or local funds available. It's not really just a shell game where you can just say, I'm going to say I have the local funds, but actually I don't have it because I'm not going to need it. Once you say you have local funds and you put your document out to the public, you're telling them that you have these funds available for transportation purposes. And that's the word of caution that I really need to say.
I actually would just put, you actually cannot build a single federal project without having the local funds to pay the contractor. It's a reimbursable basis. This conversion takes place before even reimbursable costs come in. But yeah, there's a scenario where the federal government could stop paying for transportation projects, and then there wouldn't be federal funds anymore.
So
you'd have to cancel the contract or pay for it yourself.
So I'm going to wrap it up right there. I appreciate the questions and the thoughtful insight. Sorry, were you almost wrap it up?
Some people really like digging into the details. There is a spreadsheet that I can give you the actual spreadsheet for that lays out each and every one of the steps and the timeline it takes in there, and that's one of the handouts. So if you want to see exactly how we got to these dates, and then maybe apply them to future CTC meetings, it's all in there, and That's it for my final words.
Yeah, when he says it's all in there, he means that those two handouts he's talking about are actually posted on the webpage. There's handout 1 and handout 2. Handout 2 is a spreadsheet that he's talking about that's posted on the webpage I showed you at the beginning of the workshop. So please avail yourself of that resource. Thank you, Jose Luis. All right, so this is going to take us on the home stretch. We're running behind schedule, so some things are going to go a little bit quickly, but again, this whole workshop is being recorded and will be posted later on the website, so you can review it at your leisure with more time on hand. What do you know? Oh, that's now off. Is this? Hello? Oh, stereo. No. Anyway, so just let you know we're going to get moving. I'd like to introduce you John Flores. He's going to be going the OA management piece of the workshop. He's a fantastic resource. I use him and Peggy Sue every single day, and hopefully you'll be able to follow along. We do have, if you happen to not bring a worksheet with you, we do have a few blanks up here that if you needed to use to pencil, write some stuff in there. But John Flores, come on up and we'll get going on this one. And I don't anticipate we're going to be breaking until the end, until we get to the next piece, the training priorities. Anyway, thanks, John, coming up. Oh, you're good to go. Thanks, Gina.
Okay, we'll kind of jump right into this. Hello, everybody. Peggy and myself don't get out of the office much, so this is kind of our pleasure to be here and meet some of you folks in person. So Peggy, you'll see her in a little bit. She'll present some of the information as well. So may as well jump right into it, but quickly, we kind of broke the training into 3 pieces. The piece in the middle, the second piece, will be an exercise we can all kind of work on. So hopefully that'll be kind of something new, and hopefully it'll be something kind of fun for us to work through. And in light of the trainer help future trainees, hopefully that'll also be helpful. That was kind of brought up in our workshop, and it was something new. I said, that sounds great. And one of the good things for it is it'll allow us to bring in our monthly activity reports, delivery reports, AB 1012 reports, our 3 big reports that we post online. And we'd really like to just get the message out so new folks or other folks that aren't familiar will go to our website, and we're going to talk about that later. So looking forward to it, and we'll get started. Okay, real quickly, we have 3 modules I mentioned. What's in it for me, a little bit about federal highway funds. We're going to go to module 2, which is the class exercise, and module 3, we're going to wrap up. We already had Joe's piece about the case study, and then we're going to finish with August redistribution and timely use of funds. All right, so starting with module 1, we really want to highlight, I'm sure you've all heard about the 100% delivery and also about August redistribution. We're going to talk about it a lot in OA and all that fun stuff. But it's something everybody should be proud of, and I'll talk a little bit more about it, leave on the next slide. But hopefully one of the things you get from our piece of the presentation is, the success, and it's a partnership, okay? So be very proud of that. And the next part, and then we're going to get into the federal funds. More so just an overview, get you guys familiar. We have a lot to help with the trainers, and for folks following this, we added a lot of hyperlinks. We're not going to go into those today, but you can reference programming's website, for instance. There's links to FHWA. So hopefully it's a good resource for after the training as well. And we're going to ask some questions at a few spots, so we'll see if you guys will be quizzed. All right. This is probably my favorite slide in the whole presentation, our presentation. And again, talking about the 100% delivery, and as of last September, it was 18 years in a row. And this year we're looking relatively good to prior years, so let's make it 19 years. But something you should be proud of is in fiscal year 17, again ending September 30th, local assistance of these federal highway funds, these federal formula funds, we delivered $1.28 billion of OA and apportionment. Okay, so that's pretty impressive. And then the other side of that is the August redistribution. And we've been receiving more over the recent years historically, so it's great. But if you look just the last 5 years, you guys have earned an extra $399 million for local assistance as a whole. And we're going to talk about that a few times in some future slides. I do really want to impress, because the partnership is really important. You know, it starts with local agencies, programming's involved, the regions, the districts, headquarters. We see a lot of the end results. The end of the year, we're running around to make this happen. We see some of the risk and challenges, but it certainly wouldn't happen without the starting point. And I think everybody doesn't realize how much of a big deal this is to continue to do this for 18 years. So I really like to highlight that whenever I can. It's really something to be proud of, and it is a partnership. Okay, and then the August redistribution we're going to talk about later, about what's in it for me, how you can go about getting more August redistribution for your regions, or some, okay? The next slide is our September 30th OA report. It's a handout later. I think it's handout 6, but for now it's just informational to let you know this is where you can track your delivery. Some of the samples we're going to have is going to make this clearer in the exercise. I do want to highlight here, though, you'll see this shows where the obligation total is. The right side that blew up, the far left bottom column shows the 1.28 billion of delivery, and then 2 columns to the right shows the August redistribution for local assistance as a whole, and then you can look up and see which regions or programs received what. So again, that's the end of the year OA delivery report, the September 30th report. Okay, it's just a placeholder. We're going to jump right into the federal aid funds. Okay, so this is a little bit background information. Again, there's hyperlinks, but basically just give people a general idea of these federal aid highway funds that we're talking about right now. These are authorized by Congress to assist the states for construction, reconstruction, improvement of highways, etc. There's a link there. You can go and get more background information. I know there's other funds that come into the state, but we're talking about these formula federal aid highway funds. And so what more about these? These come, the current federal act is the FAST Act. This was signed in December of 2015. And a good news is this is a longer term federal act than we've had for a while. So it covers from 2016 through 2020. And for country authorizes $305 billion over these fiscal years. And again, there's a link. I'd encourage you guys to look at the link. It has a lot of good information about the FAST Act. Okay, how do we get the federal aid funds? Wish it was kind of that easy, right? And, just got dropped on us, but it's a little bit more complex. But to simplify it and give you a quick overview, we have apportioned funds. And these are the funds the regions would be familiar with as STP. And per our Streets and Highway Code, we break it even further into RSTP. And then we also have the CMAQ funds, the Congestion Mitigation and Air Quality Improvement Programs. There's a couple links here to programming's website, and they have some program background information, et cetera, as well as apportionments, estimates, and actuals for prior years. Okay, so there's a lot of good resources out there. Go look for them. If you can't find them, give us a call, and we'll help see what we can help you with. Okay. One thing I'd like to mention on this is these apportioned funds. These projects are selected by the regions. So the funds are sub-allocated by programming to the regions, and then the regions pick the projects, okay? When we get to the next slide, the statewide pools, we have a couple examples on this screen, National Highway Performance Program, HSIP, Transportation Alternative Program, et cetera. And again, there's a link to programming site. And the next slide has some more. And the freight program, MPP, railway, highway crossing program. These are typically based on program eligibility and or CTC vote, depending on which fund. So going back, for instance, the Highway Bridge Performance Program, we have bridge coordinators in headquarters, and they manage this somewhat like an RTPA, MPO, and they base it on their criteria. And then, as you're familiar, we talked about ATP earlier, that would go out to vote, I believe. Okay. We'll take a quick look at this. This is the actual chart from FHWA's site that shows California funds for these different programs. And you kind of go left to right, and you see California here has about $3.86 billion. And that's between the state side and local assistance. This is a California total. And then to maybe add a little more clarity, this is we created this little slide here to show what the local piece for these different funds. It's not a complete list for the state, but I believe all the local formula funds are here. We have NHPP, which would more common term for us, at least in headquarters. That's for the local bridge we use for bridge program. But bridge also has off-system funds and STP, BG, which we call RSTP, and then we have CMAC and the HSIP. So again, more links, and this kind of hopefully gives you an overview of what we receive on the apportionment. Okay, so this is not the OA, but the apportionment, which leads us right into apportionment. The definition: it's a distribution of funds for a designated federal program as prescribed by a statutory formula. I think the statutory formula is something important to remember from that. There's a formula distribution, it's in the law, and that's how it comes to us. Okay. And I just had a couple notes, and one of, just to note that when FHWA makes an apportionment to a state, there's typically only two situations which they withdraw the funding, and one, as mentioned earlier, is a rescission, but the other is lapsing, and we'll talk a little bit about that. Okay, and we'll talk about some timely use of funds, about the length of availability of these funds as well, as long as they're not rescinded prior. Obligation authority, and after we get done with the obligation authority piece, we'll talk a little bit about the difference between apportionment and OA. Not that I have the perfect answer for it, but we'll see it together if we can kind of understand it a little bit better. Okay. Obligation authority, we talked earlier, the apportionment is based on statutory formula. The obligation authority is based on a federal limitation placed on the amount of funds that a state may spend against those apportionments within a given fiscal year. We'll talk about it later, but we say against the apportionments. It could be the current year apportionments or a prior carryover year apportionment. Okay. The OA, what's important to remember, and I don't get to this, but I want to highlight when we do an obligation, you need OA and apportionment, and it's dollar for dollar. So if you obligate $1 million on a project, it's going to use apportionment and OA. Okay. And a quick highlight, this OA is the funds that are actually, this is maybe what you would think of in simple terms as the real cash. This is usually the limitation, and again, going back to how this comes, this usually comes in a spending bill for in the current year. This is a way for the federal government to limit the spending based on current look. Yeah, in a FAST Act or a prior release, they can set some goal, but it's more typically that they probably would revise this to base on their spending level. Not that the apportionments can't change, but you get for instance, the FAST Act, you may get a longer term look at where they want to set the programs. The other thing I'd like to bring up on the OA is it's colorless. We do try to distribute it, and we do proportion it to the apportionments received. So some regions will get RSTP Urban, Flex, and CMAC, and they say that region has 1% of the local assistance total. They should get 1% of the OA basically, unless there's any other factors going on. But that's the general rule. However, let's say that same region chooses to spend all their CMAC funds. That OA is good for any of those programs. So let's say they got $110 million in apportionment for that total, and they have 105 of OA. They can then choose to spend the OA on whichever of those apportionments they want, as long as they're programmed, et cetera. Okay.
Got a question, John?
Yes.
So where is So where is the obligation authority given? Is it given per year by the federal government
Correct.
or?
Correct. And it's a good question. We're going to cover a little bit of that, but to answer your question now is it's an annual. It's the beginning of the federal fiscal year. We do know that a common practice is a continuing resolution will be released that could give us 30 days, 45 days of OA to start the year. And sometimes, based on the situation, it could be a second continuing resolution or a third. I think the final year's OA got released in April this year. So it's a spending bill. It was an omnibus bill this year. Each year's a little different. I think in general it does help to have a long-term federal act. Things are a little bit more normal than, these extensions or short-term. But it is an annual. Look for the OA in October. We may get a continuing resolution, but when you look at our OA report, we're going to try to estimate the year for the OA for the full year if we can. So does that help? Yeah. So I guess the thing I look at it, they're creating this long-term plan. They say, well, where do we got the $305 billion, where do we want to put it, which programs? Let's put X amount on CMAQ. Okay, then we're going to break it down to the states. Well, California is going to get about 9% of the CMAQ for each year. So now you have this 5-6 year plan to start with. And they may have some ideas on the OA. And typically the OA is, 95, 94, 96%. It's less than the program total. But then the OA, and it's important to think, the spending plan, or when they come up with the spending plan, it gives them a way to keep it constrained based on current funding. So it's kind of like a limitation, like if your kids were going to college, so well, you're going to have X amount for school this year, food, room, etc. But you're only going to give them so much a month, so they don't spend it all the first month. Or maybe you had to pay for a new engine in your car, so you didn't have as much this month, so you're going to control the spending. So it's a good tool to place the limitation on that spending. And we're going to talk about it's only good for a year, so they do it each year at the beginning. Okay. All right. Let's move on to more OA. And here we talk about, it's kind of important to know, you look at the federal definition, the OA, it'll say the OA does not carry forward to a subsequent year by FHWA definition. So the OA has to be used in the current year. If you deobligate a project this year, you need to obligate the OA by the end of the year, or local assistance has to, so the OA doesn't go away. We do want to highlight, because, me and Peggy talk about this, there's a little bit of a gray area, because we have this OA management policy that allows you to carry over up to 3 years of OA. So the federal definition, current year, OA has to be used, okay, for the formula funds. OA management policy, we'll talk about a little bit later, but that gives you the potential possibly to keep your OA longer. We kind of manage it within the regions and the programs. Talked about, again, we talked about the local partners delivering the 100%. I did want one more chance to throw that in there because, again, I think that's great, and hopefully we continue that. Okay. So moving forward. This slide here is just to represent, we talked about the breakdown of the apportionments earlier. This slide is breaking down the OA management. California, FHWA looks at the OA they give to California, this formula OA. In 2017, we received $3.3 billion. I put a little highlight there. Who's managing that? The responsibility lies with our Office of Federal Resources. So they're kind of the overseer, the liaison for the California total OA. Then it gets broken into two pieces. There's a state share. They got about $2.1 billion last year, and again managed by Office of Federal Resources. Then we have our local assistance share, and last year that was about $1.2 billion. To highlight whose responsibility that is, who plays a role in the management of it, etc. Local assistance, we have our role, communicator, reports, etc. But it's also falls on the regions. The bridge program, safety program, manage their OA. Okay, any questions on that? Let's move on. This, just a snapshot of some tools available to manage. The second, third, and fourth bullet are the reports that we do monthly. We'd really encourage you to use. I apologize, this is the one screen that I know of that the hyperlinks don't work. Get used to. I don't know what happened. But the workaround is this next slide is our screenshot of our local assistance webpage. And I've highlighted OA Delivery Report, AB 1012, CMAQ. They're right here under announcements. So you can go under our webpage, you can find it there. We have situations with our reporting, sometimes things don't work the way we want it to, so we really encourage everyone to look at your reports. The monthly activity report for the regions that have those, and you should have one if you do anything other than the RSTP exchange. So if you have CMAQ or Urban or Flex that you obligate, that you don't exchange, then you should have a monthly activity report. And that's your ledger that has all the activity for the year, apportionment changes, projects obligated, FTA transfers, et cetera. So kind of get familiar if you can with the website, the reporting, and see if it helps you out. I hope we can communicate and keep it going where we get each region looking at these reports and looking for any errors. Our ultimate goal is to have things correct. And if we make a mistake, we definitely want it to be pointed out.
Quick show of hands. Who's familiar with these reports? Who's seen them before?
Excellent.
Great.
Good.
Who has not seen them before? All right. There's a tool for you to use.
So the good news, we're going to recap Module 1. So I think that went fairly fast. We're going to do a little quiz, see if anybody wants to provide a guess or an answer. The first one, we talked about some of those funds. What are 3 types of these federal aid highway funds that we receive? We'll take 2 or 1 or 4.
Anyone? Anyone? We heard Bridge, we heard STP, we heard CMAQ. Yep. HSIP, great.
Excellent. Okay.
Who's going to be brave enough for the second one? What's the difference between OA and apportionment? Oh, we got someone in the back row. Woohoo! We hope you get it right too.
So OA is what you can spend, and the apportionment is what's been distributed to you.
Correct.
Right?
So program, the apportionment kind of sets the program amount, projection. The OA is, like you said, it's the real, I've heard people call it the cash. It's what you can spend. The good news with August redistribution, that's been coming in high. So we have extra OA to cover those apportionments that originally didn't come with OA, perhaps, for the regions that could use it. But I think that's a good answer.
It's a great answer.
Yeah.
I think you win a glass of water for
Yes.
that.
So we understand it on the terms that we use it day in, day out. I understand it's kind of something that's a little bit confusing. Call our office if you have any questions. I know.
Got a question here.
Can you actually, through August redistribution, get more OA than you have apportionments for? Can California get that?
Yes and no. So the bottom line answer in general, you need more. You need an apportionment to do an obligation. We're going to talk about the May 1st date, et cetera. But the general policy is you have to have apportionment to obligate. So if you have carryover apportionment going in, you can obligate all your apportionment, carryover, current year, whatever you have available if it's programmed, et cetera, after May 1st, right? But there's a limit. It's kind of a check and balance. If you don't have apportionment, you can't obligate it. But with that said, you can get loans, and we'll talk about that with another region. Sometimes at the end of the year, and you're going to hear us talk about priority. We have a priority of delivery for local assistance of 100%. Bottom line, we don't want to lose any OA, so we want to deliver as a whole. Potentially at the end of the year, we may need to have a shelf project in case a region can tie up the last amount of OA, and they may have to borrow apportionments internally. So it kind of depends. Feel free to engage with us, and we'll see. But in general, you need apportionment.
And does Caltrans have a master tracking sheet of how much TAP's been used versus HSIP versus Bridge versus, county of whatever, CMAQ and RSTP?
So we, again, going with the AB 1012 balances that we're going to use, that'll have your CMAQ and your RSTP. With the Bridge, the safety, we have a worksheet that we use with federal resources. So we keep tabs of that. And again, those are ran at the program level. So Bridge has a total apportionment, total OA. The TAP, we're not involved with. That's a secondary program. Those funds are held by the state and used by local. But I'm not going to claim to be an expert.
Yeah, and there are reports that the feds, or that their system produces that we access. The W10A report is a familiar one that tracks all the balances in California for actually all the states. And so we track the overall TAP balance there, and as well as the urban TAP balances, and they do it by their federal program codes or appropriation codes, M300, M301, M302. Those are some of the ones that, how we track the pots of money. Those are also tracked in FADS and in FEMA, so that if we try to go over, we'll get the, sorry, try again. Got another question here?
So just to clarify, is there, so I see that there is the OA report,
Yes.
but there is no apportionment report that we get.
There's an AB 1012 report that has the apportionment breakdown
Okay, got it.
for CMAQ and RSTP. And then there's also the monthly activity reports for those regions that has details. Okay.
Another question in the back.
I do have a question about, so if a project is, final vouchered, closed out in the fall or winter, right? Any remaining OA and apportionment come back that were savings, that OA is available to be reused during the year, has to be reused by September 30th. But if the project was old, the apportionment code was old, was an old rescinded code, that doesn't necessarily come back to your balance.
Correct.
If it was a rescinded code. If that's the case, does the OA still come back, or does the OA go away with the rescinded code?
It basically depends on the type of fund. Some of the old apportionment that gets deobligated has its own OA. So those, it wouldn't come back. If it was using the formula OA, it will come back. We haven't had a case where they took that. It's a good question because it's happened. And I don't think we cover in the timely use of funds, but it is something to keep in mind because we'll have deobligations from these old funds, and we can't always guarantee the future. And we talk about some of these timelines and such, but I guess to be aware of it, yeah. So last, the question on name and apportionment or OA report. I think we've kind of covered that.
I think we covered it. Yeah, we can move on.
So my last note, I had a note here, and I think we talked, but just to highlight on the OA, is just that it's a ceiling limitation based on current spending plan. It can be in a federal act, but revised with annual spending plan. And then apportionment was program levels in a federal act. It can be revised as well. Okay?
What determines your actual apportionment every year? Or the difference between your apportionment and your OA? What determines your OA is my question.
So those are determined by FHWA. We get a OA breakdown as well from Office of Federal Resources. And I don't know if Muhammad wants to cover the apportionment. Do you have a question on who determines the amount of apportionment we get?
Is it the same ratio or it varies?
It varies.
The question was, is it the same ratio or does it vary?
It varies.
Okay.
When I started, we were closer to 90%, and now we're averaging between 94, 93, 95%. And actually, last year we got so much August redistribution, I think we ended up with more OA than current year apportionment. So
That goes back to Rachel's question.
Yeah.
I think her original question, Rachel's question, have we ever gotten more than 100% of the apportionment as OAs? And we've had some years.
August
with the August redistribution,
But only because
we
it's
get.
carryover, right?
Correct.
You
Yep.
cannot go over your total apportionment and your carryover.
Absolutely.
Correct.
Yeah.
You've got enough OA.
Absolutely.
So the comment over there is you cannot go over your carryover and apportionment even if you have OA, and that's correct. And we got another question here with Jose.
I just want to point out the different audiences. The state may have received more OA than apportionment last year, but if you're a region, you have to do your own calculus. As a region, you only get so much OA during the year, and you only get more than that if you get August redistribution.
Correct. And we will talk about August redistribution. We'll provide a slide that displays that. So in the August redistribution has been going up. So it's a nice additional OA. So let's move on, and we're going to real quickly start with the slide, just kind of give you guys a heads up on the working exercise. We're going to try to attempt to work through a worksheet from the beginning of the year to the end of the year. And with the beginning, we will start with the carryover OA and apportionment. To help with this, Jose Luis is said okay to use SACOG's activity report for our sample. We're going to try to provide some documents to each of you so that you can actually use your region. When we get to the OA report or something, you may find that your region isn't, if your region only does the RSTP exchange, you probably won't be able to complete the exercise, but you may not need to because all you do is exchange those funds. So this is really going to work for the regions that have CMAQ or urban as well, or just flex that they can't exchange. All right. And again, the highlight for me is to hopefully show how we can use our reports on this to get you familiar with that. Does anybody need a worksheet? We have a few extra. So to kind of help simplify this, we did a couple things. One, we highlighted in yellow the areas that we're going to add data to. And then the blue highlight is actually where there would be a sum. You can sum that, total that today if you like, or you can do that later. We also provide a link to where we got the data from. In some cases, you could use AB 1012 or monthly activity report, but monthly activity reports specific to the region. So we're going to use the AB 1012 for this exercise. Later, we'll have some cells that we're not going to address in this class, but to complete SACOG's picture. And we get to the very end, that worksheet will have those links. So if you want to go back, you can look where those came from. Okay? Let's get started. Let's see how this goes. Okay? The first thing we're going to talk about here, this is the carryover apportionment. Okay? This is the September 30th, 2016 AB 1012 report. There's two reports that we do. We do one for the regions and we do a rural. And we're using SACOGs in the regional report. In this case, their CMAX 3.6 million, the RSTP is 4.4 million. So to start the year, you really need to know what your carryover is. And in this case, we're going to take that data and we're going to enter it. And this is how it would look on SACOGs, the first two lines of the column.
So you can use SACOG's numbers, or if you see your own agency's numbers up there, you can feel free to use your own agency's numbers and put those in those areas. Okay. And if anybody needs help, you raise your hand. We have a couple folks here that can help out. I'll give you guys a little bit. Keep going. Okay. So this is just informational. As I mentioned, you can use some cases you can use the monthly activity report AB 1012. If we were using the monthly activity report for SACOG, you can also get the carryover. This is the October 31st, the beginning of the next year's, but it has the September 30th balance. I could also look at the September 30th report and would have it at the bottom. So there's different sources. Again, we can't go into each region's monthly activity report, so this is just informational. Did the carryover apportionment, now we need the carryover OA. So our resource for that is the OA delivery report. And just a quick note, upper right-hand corner shows which handout this slide corresponds with. So if you happen to bring that handout package with you, go ahead and you can follow along that way.
So the September 30th, the end of the year report may take a little longer for us to finish at the end of the year, but it really has a wealth of information. We'll work with our Office of Federal Resources and we'll make sure we reconcile completely before we release this. And we don't want to release it too early because any change could affect August redistribution shares. So we try to be careful on this report. But depending on federal resources, other priorities in our, this can be delayed a little bit. So you might see the end of the year reporting in the beginning of the next year be a little bit delayed, but feel free to give us a call if you wondering where that's at in the process. This case, looking at SACOG's carryover OA, again at the end of the year, it's the far right column after all the adjustments, and it's 19.3 million negative. Again, we talked about federal definition, OA is good for a year. OA management policy allows this carryover to happen. And in this case, SACOG over-delivered 19.3 million. So if you can, on handout 3, which is the complete report, if you want to find your regions or follow along with SACOG's, we'll enter that number. So far, so good. This is what SACOG's would look like. Okay. So now we're good with the carryover, prior year information. We can move on to the current year. Again, it's going to be brief for some information. I'd encourage you to look at the very last slide when we fill in the rest of the information for SACOG on your own and see how the whole year works. Because we want you following these each month and being able to enter any changes. Okay. So we need the current year estimates. This is programming's flow chart for how the STP apportionments are distributed. This is a little bit of a blow up. You get so much STP to California, some set asides, and then it gets broken down by population, set aside for bridge, et cetera. So it comes up with some numbers. Programming takes the numbers and they provide a distribution to the regions for RSTP and for CMAQ. In this case, we're using SACOG. So this is where we'd get the data for the RSTP for the current year estimates on the far right side here. Of course, it always, one of the things we answer a lot when people call is, well, it's this, but it depends. In this case, it's not super perfect for SACOG because for their STP Flex, Placer and El Dorado retain those funds, so they exchange those with RSTP exchange. So we have to take that out to get SACOG's net RSTP, which is 26.7 million. And so that's the number we'll enter in a few slides for the RSTP. Then we go to the CMAQ, same thing. This is the breakdown flow chart, good information, how it comes up to the amount for distribution. And then we get to the second part of that apportionment sheet from program, which is the actual funds. We've simplified this for SACOG, and again to the far right, they do get this full total down below. It adds up to 29.3 million of fiscal year 17 estimated CMAQ apportionment. Okay, so that leads to the next screen, the bottom couple of rows here for SACOG, 26.7 million RSTP, 29.3 million CMAQ. So a total about 56 million of estimated 17 apportionments. We good? Do we need more time or?
Everybody following along? Okay, we're just getting the beginning of the year set up here. So that's what the apportionments are, getting that side of it set up.
Okay.
Want to do some jumping jacks? Yeah, no?
Okay. Good.
We'll keep going.
Okay, so go on to the next slide. What this is going to talk, consistent with the carryover, they've got the apportionment done. Now we have to come to the OA. This left column, the left numerical column, is the estimated fiscal year 17 OA. In this case, for SACOG, 53.1 million. And then there's some adjustments. You'll notice the 19 million, 19.3 next to it is the carryover from the prior year. And that's how we make the OA management policy work, so you can carry over up to 3 years of OA. Even though the feds wiped the slate clean at the end of the year, this is our policy that has allowed us to have this carryover and allow other folks to over-deliver so we can make sure we deliver all of our OA. Okay, this 1.1 million is an oversight adjustment, and that's based on the Streets and Highway Code, 182.6 for RSDP and 182.7 for CMAQ. There's a provision in there where we can take over for the oversight. So we need to make both those adjustments. The carryover is already in the numbers we're working on. So does anybody have questions on that? So we would enter that. Again, we're looking at the yellow highlighted cells. So on the bottom right is where we enter the estimated OA, 53.1, and the 1.1 million of oversight adjustment leads us to 32.6. And we kind of look back here and we're at 32.6 on the far right. So far so good. Okay. What I would highlight on going back to the OA delivery report real quick, upper left corner, you see region in the blue, and you see estimated fiscal year 17 OA in a little footnote 1. That's a good resource for you to look at to see what we're basing the estimates on. We're currently on our estimates using last year's actuals because it's pretty accurate to what we've been given. So we should probably soon start getting some firm real year numbers, but it's going to be estimate until September. So the OA can go up and down. We're really going to get the information out to you, especially if the OA goes up, because we want you guys to be aware of more OA. But always kind of set your sights a little higher because, one, now it's after May 1st or April 2nd this year. It's OA first come, first serve. So if you have apportionments, you can obligate. And the second thing, last year we got 100 plus million of August redistribution. So we should have a higher target, correct? Okay. So again, going back, that's the completed, that's how SACOG sample would look so far. We're going to jump in now. We missed a lot of the months in between for this exercise because, again, I can't go in and look, are there any loans for each region this month? Are there any adjustments for actuals? Is whatever could happen for the adjustments. But I would like you guys to be aware of that. So we get to the end, again, go to that resource and you can see for SACOG what they had, or best yet, go look at your region if you have a monthly activity report and see what happened during the month. Some of you may not have anything happen for 6 months, and then in June there might be an adjustment to the apportionments. Okay? But in this case, for simplicity, we're going to jump to the end of the fiscal year, September 30th, and we need to make an adjustment to our reporting. What did we actually use this year? Okay? The great thing is it takes $1 of apportionment for $1 of OA to obligate a project, so we can use this for both OA and apportionment. Our net obligations for fiscal year 17 are about 4 columns from the left, or the first red box column with the first arrow for SACOG was 45.1 million. Okay? We can take a quick peek. So if you look, kind of getting a lot of numbers in there, but bottom middle, left side, 45 million of apportionment usage. To the right, 45 million of OA usage, based on the OA delivery report. SACOG, I'm able to tell how much of that was RSTP and how much was CMAQ because I have the master log back in headquarters that shows how much they use CMAQ, how much you use RSTP. You can do that with your monthly activity reports. So you can fill that out yourself. You can call us if you want to as well. The next column is the August redistribution, if any, okay? So some folks didn't over-deliver. In this case, SACOG, because they over-delivered, they have 4.2 million of the 100 million of August redistribution credit, okay? So those are the two items we're going to enter. The 45 million, as we mentioned both places, and then the 4 million of August redistribution OA. Again, think August redistribution is OA. And I guess I didn't highlight the left column is apportionments and the right column is obligation authority. We kind of tried to break that up, hopefully, for clarity. All right? Yes, question?
So that additional $4 million of redistribution, they still have to pay back their apportionment sometime, right? So it's not free apportionment.
So that's OA only. So they use their own apportionment, or they borrowed apportionment, but this is the OA. August redistribution is
Correct.
OA. So the OA, if you remember back to the 19 million carryover OA, the negative, that's what they're repaying back in this current year. So they're going to repay back to the regions and program, back into the OA pool, 19 million at the beginning of the year for the over delivery. But if they didn't receive August redistribution, it would have been about 23 million negative.
So the problem is if they don't have enough apportionment, they couldn't have taken any OA from the August redistribution then.
Well, if you've been delivering heavy, and so you're 19 million over, then you're going to probably start with much less OA than current year apportionment because you're already going into the year with a negative. So it kind of, yes, Jose Luis?
Yeah, I want to jump in because there's just a conceptual thing. At SACOG and every region, you have two choices when doing a funding round where you're going to give out CMAQ and RSTP. You can go conservative and program 90%, 94%, program only your OA. Because if, like the woman said in the back, OA is your actual money, and your apportionment's the amount that the feds give you. If you never participate in August redistribution, you'll never get to spend all of your apportionment. That'll be just money sitting on the books that you'll never get to spend. So, as a region, you may just choose to program to your OA. If you do that, you'll always, as long as you're obligating every year, not losing funds, you'll always have enough money for what you plan on doing. At SACOG, that's not what we do. We program to apportionment levels. We take those tables from Muhanmad's group, and that's what we're programming, that's what we're trying to deliver. But what that means is, if we don't actually get August redistribution, at some point, we will need to do a funding round where we correct and we reduce how much funding we give out based on the fact that we've never actually received enough permission to spend the money we programmed. August redistribution, when we get 4 million more through August redistribution, that's 4 million more of money we would not have otherwise received that we get to use of apportionment. Had we not received that August redistribution in our next funding round, we would have to give out 4 million less. We would need to reduce it. Our goal through participating in the OA management policy is to aggressively deliver such that OA eventually matches apportionment, or at least gets closer and closer to it.
And honestly, this policy, I believe, when I started, they were working on that policy, the OA management policy, and it was kind of trying to mimic or be consistent with AB 1012 that allowed carryover 3 years, which we'll talk about. So that was one item, but on it from doing this for a while, this is a reason that we delivered for 18 years. It's also a reason that a region that wasn't using the funds this year, they used the OA next to it, they would have those funds on the book. So I think it's kind of a win-win. It helps everybody. Again, we like to encourage folks to be able to have a shot at the August redistribution with over delivery, but
And just to point it out on the screen here, I think drive the point home, 12 million is what SACOG over-delivered. That's pre-August redistribution. They 12 million over-delivery. The 4 million August redistribution is what is helping reduce that balance, so they're only going to get dinged. I say dinged, but they're only going to, their OA balance for next year's is only going to be reduced by 8 million instead of being reduced by 12 million. So that's how that August redistribution helps.
Yep.
Is that clear to folks?
Yep.
Okay.
And we're going to mention
I see
that-
glazed eyes, and it's late in the day, and they're saying, "Yep,
Yeah.
okay, we got it. All right."
But the good-
You'll have plenty of time to study it on your own when you get back and check out the webpage too.
And the good news, we'll have a visual and a few slides, and that'll help as well.
Right.
But we hope that this would kind of make the numbers look real, and we could use our monthly activity reports, and maybe you can use this with other folks so they can get used to seeing how it flows. Kind of advance through here. This is a shot of, real quick, I just want to show you, this is the monthly activity report for SACOG that shows where some of the adjustments were made. There's another one for February. It shows adjustments for actuals for a prior year. This is one for March that shows a loan repayment. So this is where you'd see it up in apportionment adjustment. You have a September 30th end of the year that we actually have actuals shown here for 17. So these are adjustments. So that's why we encourage you to look each month so you don't miss anything. The activity will be below it. FTA is below that. If you have any questions, we appreciate the break from the spreadsheets. We'll be glad to talk with you. This is a rescission that happened September 30th. I know we talked about a rescission earlier. We had one, it had been a few years, but this was a CMAQ rescission that was taken earlier in the year in June about by FHWA, but we applied it. The methodology that was agreed to at this time was based on September 30th balances to give everybody a chance to deliver. It's not a guarantee that'll be the methodology the next time. We're going to talk about rescission if we have time later. Okay.
That was the question about rescission. Yeah,
Okay.
we can move on.
So this is where we would show the actual OA and the oversight. I just want to highlight this real quick. At the end of the year, we do the actuals, we make adjustments. Go to footnote 1, you'll see what it's based on. The oversight, we may have had finalized oversight amounts or redistribution of apportionment, so we reshuffled. The oversiight's based basically on the receipt of apportionment for the different programs, CMAQ, Bridge, et cetera. Again, hopefully we encourage you guys, and it looks interesting enough, you'll take a look at these reports, okay? This is the completed sheet. I won't spend time on this, but this shows you in gold the links to those monthly activity reports that we just saw. So you can look back at that, and it completes the year. So now you can take the SACOG balances and they match our actual reporting. If we left those empty, then it wouldn't match. Yes, Jose Luis?
So I want to make sure the punchline gets home. At the end of the year, SACOG has 5.8 million of combined apportionments that we just haven't been able to obligate.
Correct.
And we have negative 8.7 million of obligation authority. So there's a difference there of a good 13 million. If we ever hope to spend all of our apportionment, we need to, over the course of the next so many years, get 13 million of OA through the August redistribution game.
Correct. And as with the May 1st free-for-all, first come, first serve, you have access to OA if you have apportionments and program. But then, yeah, you're right, you'll carry to fully be zero in the OA, you'd need to get additional OA.
And so when you go home, John did a great job of putting which report the information was pulled from on all these lines. And those reports are still posted out there. So if you need to, use this tool as a sample or resource for you when you get back to your desk, you can sort of crunch it out again with SACOGs and then fill in your own region's numbers and sort of follow along.
Okay. So we're going to wrap that up. And again, highlighted the reports. Hopefully that was kind of interesting or useful in the future for new staff or other folks. Any questions on that, or did kind of help to see how we use the reports and the numbers and how we flow from the beginning of the year to the end of the year?
We've overwhelmed them into silence.
Okay.
We got a question over there. Oh, she took it back. Oh. Yep. Okay, we like people that get in trouble.
So I'm just assuming that none of this applies to the counties that do exchange, because we're not even dealing with OA. We just get our apportionments, boom, that's that.
Yes and no. In the past, we had 1 year, I knew Mahana, we worked with him, we got a windfall of apportionments in the summer. And so from their perspective, we wanted to get the word out for financial constraint. And from our perspective, we had additional funds we had to use before the end of the year. Some of the county, I believe Winton was working on those. Some of the regions wanted to go ahead and obligate some funding. So you can choose to obligate funding, but the norm is, 98, 99% of those regions available to exchange it will exchange. But in the past, so if you obligate those funding, then you have to comply with all this other stuff. But we don't do a monthly activity report if all you do is RSTP exchange, because you pretty much get your apportionment, you exchange it. So it could potentially, it's good to be aware of it, but if all you're doing is exchanging fully, then that should hopefully take care of these federal funds.
Yeah, and just one other thing. So this year we've gotten the Highway Infrastructure Program funds. And those are federal funds that some are going to the state side and some are coming to the local agencies as well. And within those, there are population funds that we're calling them, and it's for areas over 200,000 in population, and it's from 5,000 to 200,000 as well as below 5,000. And those are federal funds that are not exchangeable. So those agencies that use those funds, that should appear on the monthly activity report, because those will be federal obligations.
They might come with their own OA though, right? So
Yeah,
we have
they
to
do.
figure some things out.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay, so let's, we'll kind of go through module 3 somewhat quickly. We went through Joe's piece already. I found that interesting. I thought it was pretty good stuff. So 2 modules, the second module's.
Let me just pause real quick.
Yeah.
I know we're kind of getting long here, so if you need to stand up and walk around, please feel free to do so. Water in the back, but we're just going to keep on going through, and we'll forge our way to the end.
Yep. So we're going to have a quick
But please return, because we do have our training survey priority stuff that you guys are supposed to tell us what you want. So don't depart.
All right, August redistribution, we talked about a little bit. Again, the OA is good for the current year, so the FHWA goes through a process. I would like to highlight that we need to give our list to Office of Federal Resources about July 9th, July 10th, and then they submit it to FHWA mid-July. So the August redistribution starts earlier, so we need all the projects in the system early so we can show that we have a need for August redistribution. And the OA is part of the process, we have to answer FHWA, any OA that we're not going to use. It also applies to some non-formula OA that gets thrown back in the pool. So they look at all the OA not used by the country, and it's thrown into this August redistribution pool, and then X amount goes to California, and it's based on some things, how much of an unobligated apportionment we have, et cetera. But that's kind of in a nutshell August redistribution definition. It is important for us to have projects to demonstrate a need, or else we won't get any August redistribution. Okay. We also talked about submitting, make it more technical, the request for authorizations to the district by July 1st. Highlight the obligation plans. We're just going recently through that deal that we're due April 1st. We take those, we do a summary, we look at them, we see how's it look for California, local assistance specifically. We're doing pretty good right now, so.
Yeah. So I know that Caltrans and regions are inundated by this report and having to submit this and that. These obligation plans that we receive from you help us determine, kind of get a preliminary snapshot on whether we think we can deliver this year's OA. It also identifies some larger dollar figure projects, and so which are potential risks areas, because if they don't deliver, we have to be able to react to that and see what we have available to capture that hole.
Yeah. So the better the information we get on the obligation plans, the better look we get at the real OA picture, et cetera. The last bullet here real quick, our current methodology, so long as I've been here, we take the regions and programs that over-delivered at the end of the fiscal year, and they go into the pool for the August redistribution proportionately. So if you over-deliver 1%, the typical rule is you get 1% August redistribution. Yep.
So over-delivery, when you say over-delivery, you're basically, that's based on the comparison with the OA share that each region is allocated, right?
Correct. The end of the year, pre-August redistribution, if your OA balance is negative, then we saw that you had a need for extra OA, so then you go into the calculation for August redistribution. If you had a carryover OA positive balance, then you wouldn't participate in August redistribution that year, but each year we do a new look. Okay. This is an August redistribution chart we've used before, and it just basically shows you have 5 regions here, different amounts of OA, different amounts of usage. The balance column shows those that over-delivered and those that under-delivered. You see to the right the August redistribution. That shows the share that region would receive. So it's the folks that went over, and it's proportionate to the over-delivery. And then again, as we talked about with SACOG, if you look at Region A, they went 27 million negative here. August redistribution, 12 million and 15 million carryover. This might be because there's only 5 regions, maybe a little bit of extreme, but it does show you in a nutshell how August redistribution works. Okay. Is there any questions on August redistribution? Okay, again, it's a great incentive to deliver, which
Absolutely.
Again, ultimately helps local assistance meet our priority of 100% delivery.
And timing-wise, John mentioned that, so we start preparing our August redistribution need or request beginning in July. And we give that to our Office of Federal Resources. They roll it up and they give it over to FHWA, which eventually gets to DC by the end of July. But we don't hear back until about the end of August. So they have to recrunch the numbers, get all the information from the states, and then we hear back, oh, here's your August redistribution, this is the amount. And then we can start applying that additional OA to projects that have been, we're waiting for this OA to come in. So if we might have used up our normal OA for that year, and so there's a big pause. And then we don't know how much we're going to get. If we're successful like we have in past years, 100 million, 108 million, that's great. We can process more projects through the system. If we get a little bit of a less chunk, then we can't process many projects, and so some projects have to wait. But it's not the end of the world, because the next year is less than a month away. October starts, and we get more OA, and we start the cycle all over again. But there could be some delay that you have to account for.
So to highlight, and we've talked about this before, the August redistribution, when it comes to us, when we're waiting to see how much and so forth we get from FHWA end of August, early September, it goes into our OA pool, our first come, first serve pool, and then whatever projects are in the queue get obligated. It's not till the end of the year, based on September 30th, everybody's had a chance to deliver. That's the formula we use for the August redistribution share. Okay? I think y'all going to meet Peggy Sue. She's going to come up and present a little piece, and then I'll finish, and I'm sure.
Sounds good. Yeah. Go ahead and advance the slide to the next. Okay. Great. So thanks, John. John will finish in a second. Right now, we're going to have Peggy Sue come up. She deals with our AB 1012 reports and State Budget Authority and jack of all trades, kind of. So she's going to talk a little bit about that.
Okay. So today, basically, what I'm going to cover is just 4 topics under the timely use of fund for federal aid highway funds. Okay, the first one is, okay, so in this case, most federal aid funds are available for the year apportion plus 3 years. What it is that when you receive your apportionment, you really only have a total of 4 years to obligate these funds. And at the end of the 4th fiscal year, these funds lapse. So with these apportionment, you have your 4 years, so it leads to the whole purpose of the AB 1012. The AB 1012 only applies to the RSTP and CMAQ funds only. And with these funds, you must obligate at the end of the 3rd federal fiscal year. By the beginning of the 4th federal fiscal year, CTC may reprogram these funds, either give it to another region or agency if the AB 1012 requirement are not met by the beginning of the 4th federal fiscal year. So what I mean is that to meet the requirement is that you need to obligate your fund, like I said, by the end of the 3rd federal fiscal years. Or if you cannot obligate the balance of it, then we recommend you to loan it to another region. The main issue with why CTC needs to reprogram these balance is that is to prevent from the state losing these funds. And so what we do is to avoid AB 1012. Is that we do send out annual notification in mid-November informing the regional agency of any unobligated balance that is entering the 3rd federal fiscal year with 1 year remaining to obligate the funds. Then we also try to keep our communication going by providing monthly AB 1012 balance report, which is on our website. And then we also submit quarterly AB 1012 balance report to the CTC.
Have you guys seen those AB 1012 reports to which she's referring? Okay. Can anybody tell me, is there any region in the area right now that has lapsing funds this year potentially? Oh, we got a hand raised here in front. Okay, good. So that means you're monitoring it, and good to know. And hopefully you have projects on which we can place those, or like Peggy was mentioning, make use of the loan option if it's there.
Yes. Okay. And the next is, OA availability is also timely use of fund. And I know John had mentioned about OA a lot. So basically, OA is good only the year received. This is like a federal definition of it. And then if the project is not programmed for a specific time and does not come in on time, there's no guarantee that OA will be available for the projects. And then next, if OA is not used in a timely manner, it may become attractive to others. And that's when it comes to the subject to OA management policy. So the OA management policy, basically what it is a division of local assistant policy instead of a federal. So therefore, with this OA management policy, it allows the OA to carry over for the next federal fiscal year. And then, as John mentioned again, May 1st, first come, first serve. So basically, you can use your OA balance up to April 30th. then as of May 1st, your OA become part of the pool. So at this point, we do encourage you to deliver your project early, because if you decide to wait toward the end of the federal fiscal year, there may not be any OA available, because our goal is to try to deliver 100% of our OA. And then the last potential to keep up to 3 years OA, what it means is that each region may be able to keep the unused OA for up to 3 years per this policy. Okay, the last is State Budget Authority. This State Budget Authority is actually provided from the state enacted budget. So what it means that the state funds and federal funds, your budget authority is good for 6 years. If you cannot use, basically, the state budget authority is really involved in invoicing. If you cannot invoice for your fund by the 6 years, then it requires you to request a cooperative work agreement, which extend the budget authority for 2 more years. So to give an example, for your federal funds, so earlier John, who had presented, where one of the process that FHWA process your E76 and then obligate your fund. The year that your fund is being obligated, that is the clicking clock, actually the time clicking, that you have 6 years from that federal fiscal year to invoice for reimbursement. So on the 6th year, we do an annual process called CWA process, where we will allow local agency to submit a request to extend this budget authority for 2 more years, so you could invoice for your projects. So each time you come in with E76 for each phase, it gives you 6 years to invoice for the funding. Then, any question?
This is, excuse me, just to explain this a little bit. This whole program is a reimbursement program. The feds give California the funds, and the funds sub-allocate it down to, or subdivide it down to the regions, and then the local agencies have the money to use on their projects. But when it comes to reimbursement, you have to spend your own money first, and then you send us a bill, and we reimburse that to you. That reimbursement comes out of our state highway account. And in order to provide you that money out of the state highway account, we have to have the authority to do that, and that is the state budget authority. And then once we accumulate a bunch of debt, we turn around and we bill the feds, and then the feds pay us back. So that state budget authority that Peggy was just explaining is because of that reimbursement process, but we have to have the authority from our state leaders to say, yep, okay, the budget's passed and it's good for 6 years. CWA process, has anybody heard of the CWA process? Good, bunch of hands, I like it. Has anybody ever had lapsed funds because the budget authority went out? Oh, Luke was going to raise his hand, but he changed his mind. Yeah. $1,000. Okay, that's not so bad. Okay, we'll let you go. Oh, that's not fair. Anyway, so that's just another deadline you need to be aware of. You got federal deadlines, you got state deadlines, all these kind of critical deadlines you need to pay attention to. Yeah, we got a comment here.
Just a comment, and we do obligate the old apportionment first, right?
Yes, you obligate it. So a lot of time people I think, OA delivery is important, and every year you try to meet it. But once you obligate the funds, it doesn't stop at that point. You still need to follow the state budget authority to use the fund within the 6 years, or it actually invoice for the fund to get reimbursement back. Because once you pass that deadline, then when you submit your invoice in, counting will bounce it back, say you don't have any funds available. And that's when it comes to the lapsing fund.
Any questions? Great, thanks, Peggy.
Okay.
John's going to come back up, and John's going to come up here and take us home. What are we finishing up with, John?
So we're almost home. I think we have loans, and we have, usually I have.
Just so to make sure that the TV land can hear you.
So we're going to wrap up with loans and rescissions, and then I'm going to probably go through that just on the slides, maybe a little quicker, but I think you'll get the information. Then we're going to wrap up with a wrap-up. And so I'd like to slow back down for that, because the group, we decided we wanted to leave you with some valuable and re-highlight some of the things, and you can reference people too quickly to see some of the important factors we just spoke about. So we'll get there. Okay, so the rescission, we just want to highlight, we talk about your funds are available for this, your funds are available for that. Now we're talking about timely use of funds and what's the risk that, where we all say it depends. Okay, again, you can keep the funds, the apportionment up to 4 years, but it depends. If many of you are aware, and we talked earlier about FHWA can rescind the funds for whatever reason. I think it's part of a legislative act, but they can take a rescission. Last year we had a rescission of CMAQ, okay? We aren't in a direct pipeline where we see these rescissions, sometimes where we have to react to it at the same time we all find out about it together, okay? And when it happened, I guess one of the good things, we talked about the OA being the cash. A rescission typically is from the unobligated apportionments. Can't say that there won't be an OA rescission, but typically we're talking here about apportionments and unobligated apportionments. The amount of rescission can vary depending on the reason. Again, highlighting that probably doesn't impact the OA, okay? Quickly highlight two kinds of rescissions. One is discretionary type. This is where FHWA says we need California to take $100 million of a rescission from these funds, and Federal Resource says, well, locals need to take $40 million. So we have some discretion over where we're going to take those funds. Our normal policy for that is to convene, sometimes we don't have much time, but to get this DLA and rescission work group together, which includes regional representation, some local representation, bridge representation, et cetera. And we'll try to hash out a methodology that we can all agree to. Maybe sometimes we don't all like it, but we have to come up with some agreement, so we take the best of, or the least of the choices, the least of the evil choices, okay? So, and again, we talked about earlier, one of our priorities is, as a whole, for local assistance, we want to deliver 100% of our OA. Ideally, perfect world, we'd love everybody, every region, every program to deliver 100% of their OA. We kind of try to help provide everybody a chance to by having the OA available or locked up till May 1st. Okay. But realistically, we have a lot of regions and programs, so we can't have everybody go to 100. So we look at a priority. Well, first priority, we want local assistance delivered as a whole. And then the OA management policy works and it protects everybody's OA, et cetera. Okay? We have a non-discretionary type, which was the kind that we just received last year, where FHWA says we're going to base it on unobligated apportionments on this date, and then they provide us a table of where they take the apportionments from. So we have little to no discretion over this. We had one at the end of Safety Lou in 2009. They did the same thing. Fortunately, in 2010, that was restored. Okay. This link here is to the notice from last year's rescission, if you want to look at it, of this non-discretionary type rescission. Just to highlight, FHWA typically exempts programs. Some of the programs that get exempt are the RSTP urban funds, the by population over 200,000. Safety has been excluded. We used to get federal safe routes to school. It was excluded. So they'll give us the universe regardless of which ones they may exempt some programs. Okay. Then the remaining eligible programs get hit with the rescission. Okay. Go back. Any questions on the rescission? Yes, Pete.
Yes. So the FAST Act has a provision
yes,
for a rescission. And it's hard to say how that's going to happen, but I wonder if there's anything we know based on what the provisions of the FAST Act say, so we can maybe try to plan ahead.
You know, I'm glad you raised that question, because I would like to highlight my understanding of that rescission in the FAST Act says based on September 30th, 2019 unobligated balances, there'll be a rescission. But they'll take the rescission the next fiscal year, right, in 2020. But it's, according to the FAST Act, it's based on September 30th, 2019 unobligated balances. So people call on the phone or email, I'll try to bring that up because again, we try to cover all possibilities we can, but we really want to highlight this timely use of funds, risk of rescission. based on that, and there may be a rescission before that, we don't see it, but there could be one before like we had last year. But the only known that I know of is that rescission. So I would encourage everyone to deliver or loan your apportionments by that timeline, hopefully to mitigate your risk. The real answer will not be until FHWA releases a rescission notice. Could be August prior to that, or when they do. Maybe they'll change the rescission. So I would expect it to happen, and I would try to spend down my unobligated balances. But we don't have the details until we get the notice.
Yeah, and just, we're working with a rescission of right now, currently on some, I guess they're either discretionary or earmark funds, but right now they're on hold. They're in they're frozen for about 45 days. They are awaiting the president to either sign and agree with the rescission and take the money back, or if he doesn't sign, then they're back in the pool and it can be obligated against. But this one came up, and it's like, whoa, okay. So that's just to emphasize the point that sometimes these things come unexpectedly, and for funds that are, have been sitting around for a while. On the list of projects, there may be, 15, 20 projects that amount up to about 7 million or a little over 7 million. And about a third of those have been used, and so it's like, okay, fine, we got our project done, built. No, 2/3 haven't been used, and right now they're frozen. There's nothing we can do about it. If you were to send a request to have those funds obligated, it would get kicked back because they're frozen out right now. If the president signs in 45 days, they're gone for good. It gets rescinded. If not, again, they're back in the pool.
So quick example on the rescission last year, we were getting continuing resolutions of OA. We had a continuing resolution going into late May of the OA, and we also got the rescission on our lap in early May. Well, we were pretty much out of the OA, and we were being told the rescission is going to happen based on May 31st apportionment, unobligated apportionment balance. We couldn't really do much to it. So that's an extreme example, the way that everything just fell in place. So sometimes we just have to react to what the rescission is. Our highlight for this is timely use of funds. We don't want to unfairly get the message, you guys, oh, your apportionments are good for 4 years, there's no risk. There is a rescission risk. So early delivery, we're going to talk about loans real quick. Yes.
I wanted, Peter brought up just a great point with the rescission coming up, and your response, I kind of commenting to underline it. So I am one of the regional representation on the rescission working group that gets convened when we find out about a rescission, and I have this insight to share. He said it's based on actual apportionments. That's at a statewide level. So one thing that we can do as a state, that's the regions plus the state on its side, is deliver like gangbusters, not just in 2019, but leading up to 2019. Because sometimes it takes a while to ramp up that sort of delivery. Individually as regions, you want to deliver. There's, what is it, discretionary or non-discretionary? We don't really know how legislature will or FHWA will apply that rescission, whether they'll just pick the fund, whether they'll give us discretion. But if they give us discretion, the working group has like a single default, which is, well, first off, RSCP probably won't be rescinded, so we'll be looking at CMAQ. And the usual policy is we're going to rescind based on regions that have CMAQ still on the books. So you can avoid having any rescission if you can obligate all of your CMAQ. If there's no CMAQ to be rescinded, then there's no rescission for a region to be paid out. So that should be everyone's strategy going into 2019, is to end the year with 0 CMAQ apportionment, which means you got to deliver pretty strong. We've been trying to, and you saw we still have carryover CMAQ from year to year.
Yeah, and unfortunately, sometimes the answer is looking backwards. We can't tell you what the rescission risk is. All we can tell you what we see right now is what's in the FAST Act. Could something happen tomorrow or the FAST Act change? Yeah, but we just want you to understand the need to use the funds timely and the risk that are out there. Please give us a call, shoot us an email if you have any questions or if it's not clear, okay? What's one way you can mitigate that risk? And if you know you're not going to use your apportionments for a couple of years, and maybe as a team we all want to try to take advantage of this prior to September 2019. If there are some regions that can use funds as a team or as a whole, maybe we could try to maximize it by having more loans in the next 18 months or so. So say, okay, I'm not going to have a project for a couple of years. I don't want to really take the risk of leaving my apportionments on the books. I have another region over here that can deliver. I'm going to go through either a memorandum of understanding, letter of understanding, whatever you guys want to put together, as long as we meet a few key requirements. But it's a win-win. It gives regions that need apportionments a way to deliver a project in the current year, and it gives a region that wants to get the risk of carrying those apportionments off their back, and they could get a future year payback. One thing on the future year payback, we'll get more into the details of it, but you can also get financial constraint if you get paid back in current year funds in that year of payback.
We have a question, John?
Yes.
Actually, if you go back to that slide, it's more of a comment, and I'm really glad Muhammad is here today. So on this loan issue, regions that have these old balances on the books, every 2 years we update the RTIP, and you get further behind with your programming capacity. So if you do loan your funds to another region, and for example, we're in a biennial update of the RTIP now, the payback can be made in the next 4-year RTIP period, right? Fifth year information, which actually gives you as a region an increased programming capacity to get those old balances off the books. And so there are multiple ways this benefits regions who do have those old balances on the book. By loaning in a year like this, you could actually increase your programming capacity in the next RTIP period, which again helps you clear those old balances off the books.
So it's a win-win for everybody. It's a win-win for our local assistance 100% delivery goal. And Mohamed,
another comment?
Just very, very quick comments. For the CMAQ, not really every region can loan it to other regions. They have to be eligible for CMAQ funds to be able to borrow CMAQ apportionments. And we do track loans and borrowing so that if a region loans their apportionments to another region, we go back and adjust those apportionments. So we track it and we hold every region to those numbers, so when you program, we make sure that you're not over-programmed.
Correct. And it may be in a slide, but Mohamed's one of our partner. We keep them informed when we get I know a lot of you, all of you put on the loan agreements. They get copied, so they're in the loop. They're an important part of the puzzle. So, okay. So again, we get into the borrowing. We talked about the benefits. Key components, we'll go through this quickly. Basically the names, specific amount of the loan, the fund type. Okay, so CMAQ, 2 million, Region A, Region B. If known, Mohamed's group appreciates this, we do too, but if known the amount of the current federal fiscal year funds, typically a region with a large balance that's loaning it to another region, it's usually carryover, and then it's not as much, it doesn't affect the financial constraint, it gets the older funds off the books. But if you know the year of the funds, then it's good to state it, especially if it's current year. The repayment information is good because and I know we talked about with some of you on this, with the repayment year, if you specify on the loan repayment that they'll be paid back in current year at the time of repayment, then you get the financial constraint, and okay, we can adjust that. So that's kind of good stuff. So you might want to make sure you have that language on there. And again, what fund type, because we're going to borrow CMAQ and repay and flag or whatever. So specify the repayment as best you can as you do with the original loan. Okay. This paragraph here in gold is kind of important to us. As a reminder to all of us, we prefer that you put a paragraph on there saying it's the region's responsibility to initiate repayment. Through our experience in doing these, it's often that the loans end up getting revised. And as long as all the partners to the agreement say, well, let's delay the repayment for a year, then we can do that. But we really want to rely on you guys as well to let us know, hey, we want to initiate the loan repayment in January or October, or we want to hold off on it, wait till June and see what our needs are. So as long as everybody agrees to it, then we can do those type of revisions, okay? And then it has to be signed by the authorized folks. So this will be quick. On the, any questions on the loans to this point? Yes.
Sorry.
So I'm presuming you can't do this with earmarks, but just checking.
If you can, or I don't know, because this is just the formula OA piece, the piece we do. I'm not familiar with that. I don't know if anyone else can answer that.
I'm not familiar with demo funds or like non-formula funds being loaned. But the challenge with demo funds is that they are specified for a particular area by legislation, and you can't use it anywhere but there. So if I don't see a loan happening like that. We've just been going through a couple of years of repurposing, which gave some flexibility of reusing those non-formula funds to put those in different areas. But again, that had to happen by a congressional act. So, and while I mentioned it, there is going to be a repurposing 3.0. So there 1.0 was in 2016, 2.0 17. So there's going to be a repurposed 2018. We're not expecting any kind of earth-shattering funds necessarily. But we're starting to take a look at what projects could potentially be on the list, and we're going to get the information out to you sooner or later. Does anybody have any questions on that? I mean, sooner rather than later. The only thing I would say also is one of the conditions on the past years that has always been present to allow you to repurpose these demo funds is getting your projects closed. If your project isn't closed, then we can't repurpose the funds. So you might have a demo project that uses funds on 5 different individual projects within that legislated area, but 1 or 2 of those may still be open, and we can't touch the rest of that entire demo, those demo funds, because those projects are still open. So I'm encouraging you to not only close all the rest of the projects that you have out there, final those out, get them off the books, but especially with repurposing, you got to start looking at getting those closed also. There's a question over here.
So do you know at this point if any of the substantive language to repurposing changed? Like, for example, the repurposing within 50 miles or a short range, or any of those specific provisions changed?
We know a little bit. First year was a 50-mile radius. Second year was a 100-mile radius. This year we're seeing that it's back to a 50-mile radius. So that's all other than that, everything else looks like it's remaining the same.
I just wanted to ask what the first step of the repurposing processing will be and when it's anticipated to start kicking off.
The first step is going to be compiling a list of projects, and then the next step is going to be posting that list of projects, and that'll be happening within the next few weeks, as I'm looking at my compadres in the back of the room. So by the beginning of June-ish is when we would anticipate having all those projects identified and posted on our webpage. Any more questions? Okay.
So almost done with this. I just want to leave the borrowing with an example. Okay, so for several years, I don't know if it's been 8 or 10, but we've allowed some of these loan agreements that say up to. So say Region A would like to borrow up to $3 million of CMAQ from Region B. We've allowed that for flexibility to try to help with delivery. My preference would to be more definitive and say on the date of the signature of the letter, Region A is giving Region B the funds, because we have our own concerns, like, well, both regions, because we don't guarantee we'll deliver it by September 30th, and we don't guarantee we're going to use it, so the loan isn't really finished. But we've allowed that for flexibility with the delivery, et cetera, and it's been working. The negative to that, I just wanted to point out, we've had instances where the regions had these up to agreements, and last year we ran out of OA earlier than normal. So the project that was going to come in and use those funds didn't get obligated till October or November the next year, and the loan agreement said we'd like to borrow it up to $3 million, but it's only applies till September 30th. So the loan never happened, and then the rescission kicked in, et cetera. So there's risk to doing those up to loans. We can talk about those. Feel free to use us as a resource to work with you. You guys can use each other as a resource. There's lots of old loan agreements you can look at. We work with programming as well to make sure there's no issues. So anyway, we're good on the.
I do anticipate that the feds are looking for more places to rescind funds, and I'm looking at the big HSIP balance that we have in our state, and I know you guys are working closer with local agencies. I think the ongoing reports about who hasn't delivered and where they're supposed to be and setting hard deadlines is great, but I'm wondering if there's some other creative solutions like this borrowing apportionments between regions, if there's any way for us to lock some of that HSIP funding by doing loans between the HSIP program and, regional shares at all. Just, I think another big rescission is going to keep coming, especially with the tax bill. I mean, they're looking for funds, and anything on the table, I think, is seriously at risk.
So the history is safety's been one of the programs typically excluded. Correct. And again, the rescission into Safety 2009 took from pretty much most or all programs, so there wasn't so you can't guarantee there'll be exemptions. The highlight of the exemptions is it means the eligible programs get hit harder, so that's kind of our message there, and I agree it's best to assume that nothing will be exempt. With that said, California's safety apportionments by the end of the year are usually low to none or very low. Sometimes they borrow against our apportionments to ensure California spends the safety. However, safety's over-delivered their current year OA last year and I think the year before, and we're going to be working with them, so I don't know the number this year, but I think they're going to continue to over-deliver their current year. So it's going to take time, but I think they'll catch up to using those apportionments. And as we need those, then the state side is helping us repay those funds. So does that answer or help?
Your point's taken that they're still at risk because
Yes.
there is still a backlog of them. But over the past 3 or 4 years, our safety program manager has been working pretty hard to try to clear that backlog. And it was a fairly sizable backlog, and so we're chipping away at it. However, is there a way that loans could be made within that program and help reduce the potential for that rescission wave to take that out? That's something we would have to explore. I don't know if it exists or not. We'd have to talk to our probably safety folks to see if it does. But at this point, what we can help encourage is to deliver those safety projects. The faster you can deliver them, the faster the balance will be reduced, and then the rescission won't hit as hard.
Okay.
Not as hard as that silver tsunami that's coming around, I'll tell you that.
Okay. We've talked about this, except for the FTIP piece. If the FTIP is affected, again, with the current year funding, et cetera, then we want to make sure we maintain financial constraint. As Mohan mentioned, they work on that. We keep them in the loop on the loans that are in place. Okay, so quickly, August redistribution. Why is it good for DLA, local assistance, all of us? Does anybody? Correct.
Heard more OA, yeah. More money?
So last year we got more OA than current year apportionments because we maximized, and we get this $100 million, $108 million. I give credit to everybody because we had projects available. The first year we got $107, $108 million. We had typically been getting like 50, 60 million. We're like, oh boy, but we delivered our maximum. And we work with federal resources they'll tell us what our share is. And if we don't have enough projects, we can't maximize, but we've been maximizing it, so it's great. Okay. So why is the DLA OA management policy important? I'll kind of answer to that, but we talked about it's a win-win. It allows regions that maybe are pulling their money to deliver in 2 or 3 years to pull that money with the OA management policy by allowing other regions that can over-deliver, or programs that can over-deliver this year, to use that OA pool after May 1st. Okay. And it mirrors the AB 1012 for folks that can keep 3 years of portion, et cetera. But there are risks with that, we talked about rescissions, and I guess the OA could be rescinded as well. I don't want to say that's a norm, but, you know, again, if we keep OA on the books, it could possibly be lost. Anybody want to answer what's the benefit of a loan agreement for the region, either the borrower or the, yeah.
Go ahead,
So-
you can talk and I'll just repeat what you say. If you guys have mic fear. Future programming
Yep.
capacity? Yep.
So you can't use the funds this year, but the project's coming in next year, or the year after, get repaid in current year, you bump up your financial constraint. So that works, it's a win-win.
Avoid rescission, that's right. Or
Absolutely.
minimize the impact of it, or avoid it altogether, sure.
Right, so it's a valuable tool. Again, if you're not sure, you want to give us a call and we can go through it. It's fairly common. It's part of our normal practice.
Good, thank you.
Okay, so 2 slides to go. This was part of the regional input. We want to get some information to you to wrap up, to kind of highlight some of the key areas. And we'll just read through these real quick, but some of the importance of the federal aid highway funds to remember or to reference later. Regions receive apportionments by statutory formula. Okay, that's the apportionment. Number 2, each region receives OA proportionate to apportionment, but typically less than 100% ratio. That's the spending limitation. The next, each region may be able to keep unused OA for up to 3 years per the OA management policy, even though the OA has to be gone at the end of the year. The apportionment for 3 years per AB 1012, unless there's a rescission. Okay, so the OA management policy, it's on our website through the AB 1012 link, as well as AB 1012 guidelines. Okay, to finish, regions can obligate others OA after May 1st. Regions can't obligate others apportionment without mutual agreement or the loans we've talked about. And the very last thing comes around August redistribution. It goes out proportionally to regions or programs like Bridge that over-delivered. So everybody try to, maximize your OA, see if you can go and try to get some August redistribution. And, we encourage that and look forward each year to find out how much August redistribution we get. And I don't know, it's kind of a nice piece to the puzzle we anxiously look forward to. And there's no guarantee that we'd get any. I mean, realistically, we'll look historically, and we do, and the number's been going up. So I'd plan on what we've been getting. But I'm not going to tell you and guarantee you that we'll have August redistribution. Okay? And there's contact information. Thank you.
So I would really, please, John Flores, Peggy Sue, John Hool in the back, Jose Luis. I was just going to come up here and say these guys deserve a huge round of applause because they put together these presentations. I just had to make sure that they got them to me on time and that I could post them on the internet. But anyway, another round of applause for these guys. Thank you very much. So with that, that brings us to the final part of our program. And so before you came here, I believe Patricia asked you to consider, think of, write down what you guys would want to be your training priorities in the near future, upcoming training priorities. So have you done your homework? Has anybody? Yeah. So we'll go about it this way. I will sort of see if anybody wants to raise their hand and throw out an idea, and then maybe Mark, do you want to write it down as we collect it? Perfect. Okay, we got Patricia. What do you got?
So I'm going to just prime the pump by saying I think we have these 3 new programs, and they have really tight deadlines, and they have a lot of reporting expectations and a lot of penalties if that doesn't happen. So it's really important for sponsors to know what it is they're dealing with. So I think it's going to be really important to get some training on that. I think that's a priority. And then a favorite of mine, the federal aid series is really fantastic and everybody should do it, right? But not everybody can afford to send their staff away for a week. Some smaller agencies I'm thinking of, particularly in my region, just might not be able to spare the people. But I've heard there is an option to kind of break it down into like a few different 3-hour segments or something like that, I think that would be really helpful. And so that when I come in contact with a local agency that I see is struggling, I could say, hey, there's this coming up in May, or there's a webinar on that, and it would be something bite-sized that I know they could go to.
Great. Did you get those, Mark? Okay.
Thanks. To build on what Patricia was saying, I think that including those other 2 odd programs that John mentioned, that stuff about, what is it, transit, ATP rail, it'd be good to bring those into the same training so our partner agencies are understanding how the whole is going to work, because they have the same reporting requirements, and we should be learning all this stuff together across programs, including the folks in the department, to be on the same page with what's going on with our partners.
Okay, so I'm hearing some specific program training about how the funds may come to California, how to use those funds, the reporting, tracking requirements, et cetera. Specific to the SB1 program itself. Okay. T-STEP Solutions and LPP. Yep. Okay. I don't know that we're going to be able to put something together that fast. Yeah. Okay. It's going to be stand-up training night. We got another one back here.
So, as an agency that doesn't get a ton of federal money, I thought that the advanced construction tips were super useful, and I would love to have people who have some project delivery tips to get together and pull together a presentation on that. You know, where are some of the common pitfalls? Where are some of the ways that we've been able to address it and deliver faster than other people? And it might be regions, and it might be a county or a city, and it might actually be a Caltrans district.
Got that, Mark? All right. Great. Yeah, I could see our local agency regional input on that. It definitely can highlight these successes as well as the pitfalls. Yes?
So, well, I don't know, local assistants might not think this is helpful, but I think one thing that at least for us would be helpful would be to have Division of Rail come to something and tell us about the process for getting those projects approved, like how do you get a CTC allocation when it's through Division of Rail, and so forth. And another thing, we've just been having this issue, it would be, and this would be involve local assistance, is it would be good to have something about how do we know which part of Caltrans a project falls under, because sometimes it's not exactly intuitive, you know, whether it goes through the capital side of local assistance or the rail side, so it'd be good to kind of walk through that.
Yeah, great. As far as, you know, sometimes it's not even intuitive to me as far as which avenue it should follow. And we do get those ones that are kind of, well, does it go this way or that way? So absolutely.
Right now, the locally implemented state highway system.
Local on the state highway, grade separation, does that go to rail, local assistance, or capital? Understood. And the first one, as far as having Division of Mail mass transit out here, yeah, I think that'd be a great opportunity. I could attend that because I was like, yeah, what happens when it goes that way? Anybody else? Yeah.
Piggybacking on what Debbie mentioned, and I know the Self-Help County Coalition sometimes works on this, but we have a lot of local lead projects, even our county doing an intersection project on Caltrans right away. And it's an LCO project, not an encroachment permit project. And going through, I know that San Diego's had a lot of success, and we're all very excited that Lori's the new director, at, you know, really partnering on those kind of projects and delivering quickly. And I think everyone would really benefit from something. It's not necessarily what local assistants would share, but where districts are, there seems to be a different record in different districts on how quickly LCO projects can be implemented. And I know Caltrans is working on all these efficiency standards and stuff, and quicker review times, but sometimes we're not all seeing it, and I think it would be helpful for Caltrans project managers also to hear from each other at different districts on how they're being creative around that.
Yeah, thank you, and it's getting lots of nodding in the seats, and so you're on the hook for training. I'm just going to tell you right now. Yeah, that seems to be the scary monster in the closet that no one wants to open the door and see. It's those local on state highway kind of efforts. So, but yeah, definitely have. I got Mohammed, and go ahead, and then we'll go to.
Well, I want to thank you for putting this together, this workshop together. It came timely because at the California Federal Programming Group, the last meeting, they requested a training on OA and apportionments and so forth. And I think this should continue being given, this same workshop every couple years, because this. No, yeah, exactly. Every day. No. Because it is. You get new staff, and this issue is always a source of confusion for a lot of people. But I also appreciate that throughout your presentation you referred to the programming and the FTIP and the importance of the FTIP. So maybe next time the programming of the FTIP should be part of this presentation, just to kind of explain to everyone the importance and some highlights and so forth. Thanks.
Absolutely. So Mohammed wants to be the king again. He wants this all about programming. No, but thank you for your comments. Absolutely. And yeah, luckily we are recording it so that we don't. It's available for. I mean, this will be posted on the same page we have the rest of the stuff, so people can download it and use it and review it. But yeah, getting out there to get that face-to-face contact provides a more enriching experience. Sure, Dawn.
So I kind of want to echo a little bit of what Patricia said. I think the Federal Aid series is a great series for knowing and understanding the federal regulations and rules for delivering federalized projects. But there are also other aspects, especially with these big 5 programs that are going to experience CTC allocations, and many will be state-only funded, that when you start having turnover at local agencies and they're getting exposed to the rather large local assistance procedures manual and program guidelines, and starting to wade through the various forms and filling them out. Some of them have some detailed instruction sheets, some not so much. There's a lot of terminology in those sheets that's not really intuitive. Sometimes I found some of the language, for example, in the Form 15M, which is the detail estimate that gets updated to close out, that has to match what you're filling out in Chapter 17 forms. We found some little disconnects here and there, and what has kind of been lacking, in my opinion, is something more kind of real time, how to complete all of those forms, just some basics. So every year I fill out a conflict of interest form. But I know that on the state website there's a training that'll point me to this part of the form, and I can click and a little video comes up and says this is what they're asking for and why. So even if it's something that's just recorded, you don't deliver it ever live, but we could go to that procedures manual, look at the form, and I see the question and I don't understand it. There's a little, either a bubble that comes up or a little video that says, CFR section whatever requires this, your project to meet this, this, and this. This question, where do you find it?
Capture all that? Good. No, that's, I think, very valuable. It sounds like you're asking us to actually get into the 21st century, maybe, become technologically proficient, which is a very good advice. But yeah, great ideas. I saw a lot of heads nodding at that same thing, and I'm one of them too, because that will help reduce phone calls and what have you, for sure. Any other ideas? If you think of something, go ahead and fire your DLAE an email, fire Mark an email. Notice I'm not saying fire me an email, but one of the things that I do want you to do is those ideas that do come to you, communicate them to us, because we do take them in and we do put together trainings such as this one to help you guys out. One other last thing that I wanted to prepare, but I forgot to do, was evaluation sheets. I'm not going to say, hey, fill out an evaluation sheet and all, what have you, but what I do want you to do, and this is your little homework assignment, just tell us how you thought the workshop went across. How were the presenters? How was the material? Did we answer your questions? Improvements, comments, anything you might have to offer that we might make improvements to the presentation in general? Send that to me. You can send that as in an email to me, and then we can assemble it and just sort of make revisions and modifications as necessary. So if we don't have any more questions, I think I'm going to wrap it up. Mark, do you have anything to say? Good? All right. Thank you for participating. I know it was a long day after a couple days of a meeting, and I almost am tempted to do a mic drop, but I don't think I will. But anyway, thank you all for coming.